Well, good evening and welcome to Primo Apuzzo Live. Today is Thursday, May 21st, 2020, or as I accidentally said once, May 21st. I actually did that, and I didn't catch the typo when I was typing that time. I went May 21, and I put a TH instead of the ST, so it was like May 21st. I mean, what do you do with that if it's like RD, May 21? I mean, I don't. Anyway, today is Thursday, May 21st, 2020. And here are some of the things that are happening in our world as we speak. And by the way, I'll try something a little different tonight. I say that every week. Tonight, I'd like to invite some friends to share the news with me, if possible. I've invited some good friends along. Hopefully, they'll show up. I've invited my good friend, Morgan Freeman. President Trump might show up. Former presidents Bill Clinton, Obama, and George W. Bush. I'm still working on my Obama voice. I'm trying to get it. Obama's like, look, here's the deal. Look, he always starts off with, look, here's the deal. So that's, I actually made him sound like a black Walter Cronkite there, didn't I? Walter Cronkite's like, hello, welcome to the CBS Evening News. I'm Walter Cronkite. And change that over to Obama. Hello, look, here's the deal. Kind of the same. I have a problem with meshing voices sometimes. Anyhow, here's what's happening in our world as we speak. Well, it's graduation season for many students across the country. Because of all that's been going on, large ceremonies have unfortunately been reduced to online commencements and small backyard gatherings. Oh my. That kind of reminds me of my good friend, Andy Dufresne, who I met during my time at Shawshank Penitentiary. I stayed there for 25 years. It took Andy Dufresne 19 years to dig through that wall. He escaped. He was an innocent man, so he claims. Everybody who comes into Shawshank says they're an innocent man. If you saw the movie, you know he was innocent. I didn't. Why? Because I was in the movie. I didn't get to watch the movie. Anyway, back to the news. The ultimate goal of getting to graduation day is, of course, the diploma or the degree that you receive. In that sense, I'm quite positive that the majority of students are quite satisfied. But I know that there are those who look so forward to the pomp and circumstances of the ceremony. That's a song, by the way. Pomp and circumstance. Who names these songs? But it must be disappointing for some of these students. Either way, congratulations are in order for the class of COVID-19.
Good evening. Elsewhere, last week, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, great guy, terrible mayor, great guy, issued an executive order requiring residents to wear face masks whenever they leave their homes. Masks are already required when inside businesses, riding the awful public transportation, and at the Los Angeles International Airport. That's tyranny as far as I'm concerned. Garcetti, again, great guy, everybody knows it, eased some restrictions, announcing all retail businesses can reopen for curbside pickup and delivery while implementing that social distancing thing. Bottom line, if you're a big fan of freedom, stay away from Los Angeles. Stay far away for a few months. It's the most brutal, most unfantastic, most unreliable city in the entire State of the Union, and everybody knows it. Such as the world has never seen.
In other news, in a 4-3 decision, the Wisconsin Supreme Court struck down the state's stay-at-home order, handing Democratic Governor, that's my guy, Tony Evers,
Fantastic guy.
a defeat in his administration's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Republicans, those are my guys, and some business owners cheered the ruling as a win, a win for liberty, while local officials in Dane County and Milwaukee immediately announced they would be enforcing the state's rules at the local level, creating a de facto regional approach to combating the spread of the disease. Look, here's the deal. In its order, the Supreme Court said Health Services Secretary Andrea Palm exceeded her authority. She's a hottie, isn't she? Nobody asked you, okay? With her sweeping order, I'm mixing voices up now, declaring the mandate invalid and therefore unenforceable. I love the consonants. I love the vowels, but I love the consonants, Asia, Africa, Europe. Invalid and therefore unenforceable, meaning some businesses and restaurants could open immediately. Another victory for freedom. Oh my. NASCAR racing returned this past Sunday at Darlington Raceway in South Carolina. Nothing nuclear about that. Driver Kevin Harvick won his 50th career race in front of a roaring crowd of 0 people. That's right, 0 people. I realize that sports are all still sports, but it's just not the same when there's nobody there except for the athletes and the ladies. Finally, more and more states are beginning to relax their stay-at-home orders. This is good news, as the unofficial beginning of summer happens this weekend with Memorial Day approaching. Oh my, Memorial Day. I always remember that May is Memorial Day and September is Labor Day. I used to get those two mixed up. I don't know why. More and more people will be making their way outside. It truly is a time to end this and get back to normal. Look, here's the deal. I somehow became president. It wasn't me, it was you. It could have been George Soros and the Illuminati that got me elected, but you didn't hear that from me. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the news for the week of May 21st. Is it 3rd, 1st, 2nd? Be right back after this.
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Hooking up words and phrases and clauses.
Conjunction, junction, how's that function?
I got 3 favorite cars that get most of my job done.
Conjunction, junction, what's their function? I
got and, but, and, or, they'll get you pretty far. And that's an additive, like this and that. But that's sort of the opposite. Not this, but that. And then there's or, O-R. When you have a choice like this or that. And, but, and, or get you pretty far.
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Hooking up 2 boxcars and making them run right. Milk and honey, bread and butter, peas and rice.
Hey, that's nice.
Dirty but happy, digging and scratching, losing your shoe and a button or 2. He's poor but honest, sad but true. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Hooking up 2 cars to 1 when you say something like this. Choice, either now or later, or no choice. Neither now nor ever.
Hey, that's clever.
Eat this or that, grow thin or fat. Never mind, I wouldn't do that. I'm fat enough now.
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Hooking up phrases and clauses that balance like out of the frying pan and into the fire. He cut loose the sandbags, but the balloon wouldn't go any higher. Let's go up to the mountains or down to the seas. You should always say thank you or at least say please.
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Hooking up words and phrases and clauses in complex sentences like, in the mornings when I'm usually wide awake, I love to take a walk through the gardens and down by the lake, where I often see a duck and a drake. And I wonder as I walk by just what they'd say if they could speak. although I know that's an absurd thought.
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Hooking up cars and making them function.
Conjunction, junction, how's that function?
I like tying up words and phrases and clauses.
Conjunction, junction, watch that
I'm
function.
gonna get you there if you're very careful.
Conjunction, junction, what's your
I'm
function?
going to get you there if you're very careful.
Conjunction, junction, what's your
I'm
function?
going to get you there.
How could we forget the beauty of Schoolhouse Rock? Oh my goodness. You have no idea how much stuff I learned about U.S. history and about our country in general just from watching Schoolhouse Rock. I love that. I used to love that show. And thanks to the beauty and the magic of YouTube, you can pretty much find them all now and at any time of the day or night. They're all out there. Even ones that I never got to see before when I was a child. There are some in there that I was like, I never saw that one. Oh, no way. And so, but there were some of the more popular ones like that one, like the one I'm going to play later. If I can find it here. But anyway, so now I'd like to jump into not necessarily a topic tonight of discussion. I if you had gone on, if you saw my what's it called, my Facebook post about 15 minutes ago, I told you that I was going live and that this was going to be a short show tonight. Tonight is mostly going to be really no straightforward topic, mostly opinionated tonight. And maybe we can draw some topics in at the end if we'd like. We'll see where this goes. But here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to do something now called op-ed time. That's OP-ED, okay? Now, what exactly is op-ed time? Well, this is the moment I'm going to dedicate to the show where I get to have an actual opinion about something. You see, the idea of good journalism has always been this. Just tell us the news without your opinion. We don't want to hear what you think or which way you lean. Just tell us the news. Give us an unbiased, nothing but the facts report of what's going on in the world. Now, the term op-ed, okay, in case you don't know what that is, in and of itself is really just a shortened way of saying, quote, opposite the editorial page. When we used to get actual newspapers delivered to our house, I think my brother actually used to deliver newspapers when he was, I used to kind of help him do his collection run back then. There used to be a page dedicated to the, letter to the editor or the op-ed page. And it literally means opposite the editorial page. There was the editorial, the news, and then there was the opinion page, the op-ed. I also like to think that op-ed can mean opinion from the editor. Okay, that kind of makes sense too. So here's what I got for you tonight. Okay. These last 2.5 months, maybe even longer for some of you, have been nothing short of awful for a lot of people. So many good, decent, hardworking people have lost their jobs as a result of pretty much one thing: fear. Now, so much has been said by many different people, from doctors to professionals to politicians, because of certain biased media outlets. I won't do any name dropping here. The general public has been conditioned to become afraid of doing the simplest tasks. Things like food shopping, for instance, or just going out to dinner, going out for a cup of coffee with some friends, or even, just getting together with somebody or a group of friends. People, unfortunately, have been conditioned to believe a certain thing. And the more you tell people something each and every day, the more they're going to believe it. I mean, think about this. When you see, and I've seen this firsthand, and I know you've seen it too, when you see people wearing face masks while driving in their cars with the windows up and they're by themselves, think about that for a second. You're wearing a face mask in your car by yourself. That's when you know that the narrative of the media has unfortunately taken root in someone. When the news of the day causes a massive run and shortage on things like toilet paper and cleaning products, hand sanitizer, that's when you know that the talking heads that we see on the news every night have unfortunately infiltrated and reached the gullible masses who watch and trust everything they hear as absolute truth without even questioning it. I swear that you could go on TV, okay, and for 3 months straight, 5 days a week, every night on the 6 o'clock news, you can have somebody on there, somebody popular that people look up to, like Lester Holt or something. Okay, he could say something like, "By the way, water is made of 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part limestone." And if he said that for 3 months straight, some people would actually start to believe it. Okay, they'd start to believe it without even questioning it. This is how gullible some people are. So, where do we go from here? Well, here's the way I see all of this eventually panning out over time. Now, where do we go from here? Well, before I give you an actual answer to that question, let me set this up for you in the proper context so that you know where I'm going with this and why I'm going this way. Okay. And again, this is an op-ed. It's an opinion. What I say right now, you may not be thinking the same thing, and that's fine. That's it's okay to disagree. Okay. If you disagree with me, feel free to call in a little bit when I open up the phone line. I want you to think back to September 11th of 2001 just for a second. I got to bring that day into this as my example. Those of us who are old enough to remember the events of that day in great detail, we know just how awful and impactful that day was. It's burned and pretty much seared into our memories and our psyche. It's one of those moments in time that when someone asks you, where you were, who you were with, what you were doing, what you were wearing, what you were eating, etc., you can pretty much answer those questions without hesitation. You knew. It was one of those moments in time, like, when folks who are older than me remember when President Kennedy was shot. Okay, kind of one of those, those pillar moments that you just remember and can't forget. It almost comes back to you like the memorized lyrics of a great song that word for word. Mind muscle memory, if you will. Now, what happened in the days immediately following 9/11? Well, let's go back a ways. Okay. George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, okay, were president and vice president at the time. George W. and Dick Cheney, like the penguin he reminds me of. Okay, so George Bush and Dick Cheney were president and vice president at the time. There was the usual bad blood between Republicans and Democrats, that had been going on like normal, maybe not quite as brutal as it is today, but it was there. I think that's when the real harsh wars between conservatives and liberals actually really began, right around that right after Clinton, I think. Okay. The aftermath of the crazy 2000 election cycle between George Bush and Al Gore was still fresh on the minds of many people. Liberals were still kind of bitter about Bush winning the White House at the time. You remember there was the contested election, the dimpled Chads. It all happened down here in Florida, unfortunately, where everything got messed up. Ballots were messed up, lost, shredded, whatever, dangling Chads, whatever they were called. Everything was all messed up. And it was, there was a paper ballot system mostly at the time, and it just got all crazy. And people were, of course, after George W. Bush was deemed the winner, people on the other side of the fence were, calling for the end of the Electoral College after that as a result. Why? Because, Bush didn't win the popular vote. Actually, I don't know if I kind of got my years mixed up. I forget if Bush lost the popular vote in, 4 years later to John Kerry, or if he had lost the popular vote to Al Gore. I don't remember, but either way, he was a two-term president. Okay. And liberals were calling for, his head pretty much at that time. They were bitter. All right. Then a national tragedy strikes, and all of a sudden, everyone came together. It was all unicorns and rainbows. Everybody was fine on cloud nine. It was very surreal for me at the time to see liberals singing "God Bless America" alongside conservatives. And I hate to admit this, forgive me for this. I remember saying to myself when I saw that on the news one night, when I believe they had done this either. So they maybe in the hall in Congress or in the Senate. I don't remember where they did it, but they all stood up and were singing "God Bless America." And I remember the first thought that came to my mind was, "You hypocrites! How dare they suddenly sing about the same God that they deny every day with their ideology?" This is what I was thinking back then. Who do they think they are? Was my initial thought. I was pretty peeved, okay? But then after a few days of that, I began to almost believe that they were being sincere, and I calmed down a bit. It started to feel good for a time, but after a while, no, there goes Morgan Freeman again. After a while, everything started to go back to normal. If you remember that week, the stock market took a huge hit. Okay. It was only like a week. It didn't last very long. It hasn't lasted as long as this mess has lasted, where I've pretty much already lost everything I've put in to 2020 in my IRA. But, the year is still young, so I'm being patient, not selling everything. That's a stock tip. Be patient. It'll end. It'll go back up. So the stock market took a big hit that week. No planes were able to fly for a week, if you remember. And I have to pause there for a second. A little bit of a testimony. I wrote a short book 10 years ago this week. Actually, I published it, and Facebook was nice enough to remind me of that. I wrote a book called Grace at the Grave 10 years ago, published it. It's got an ISBN number, whatever it's called. And in there, one chapter is dedicated to my experience with 9/11. I won't go into detail, but I'll say this, that my brother, and a friend we were in Dallas that weekend. Okay. We were at a Cowboys game down in the old Texas Stadium in Irving. Okay. Oh, Nelly. No, that's Jacksonville. Jacksonville. Good evening. Oh, it's going to be a humdinger of a ball game. Oh, Nelly. Sorry. Get him out of here. He's dead. But anyway, my brother and I were in Dallas that weekend, and we were flying back home on Monday, September 10th, from Dallas to Philadelphia. And then we connected in Philly and had to go to Hartford when I used to live in Connecticut. And I remember the last 20 to 25 minutes of that flight into Philadelphia was treacherous. There were thunderstorms all over the place. You can see, lightning flashing outside the windows. We were getting battered and bruised. I hated that flight. Hated it. My hands were seared into the armrests pretty much. And then we landed in Philly, and because there was a ground stoppage at Philadelphia International Airport that night because of the storms, we landed. It was like, okay, great. Woohoo, we're here. And then we had to wait another 45 minutes to get a gate because none of the planes were able to leave because of the storm. So now we had to get a parking space. We finally get in. We finally take off from Philly. And if you look on a map, okay, you'll know if you draw a straight line between Philadelphia and Hartford, you'll know that it crosses pretty much right over Manhattan. And so through the clouds, after the storm had passed and everything had dissipated, I looked down and I can see the lights, the beautiful lights of the city. I saw the Empire State Building, saw the World Trade Center at the time. And my thought was, wow, New York looks so beautiful and peaceful from up here. And then we landed in Hartford. And of course, 9 hours later, I get woken up by a phone call from my then fiance to say, hey, turn on the news. And that's when the first plane unfortunately had hit the South Tower. So, God was gracious to us. So, 9 hours before we were on an airplane, If we had waited one more day, we would have been stuck in Dallas for a week, probably. But anyway, that's quick testimony there. So the stock market we know took a big hit. No planes were allowed to fly that week, but little by little, the months went by, and the status quo returned. Now, mind you, 9/11 was a one-day event and not a pandemic. Okay, it was a one-day event that impacted us for months, maybe even years. Maybe some people are still, suffering from that. With maybe some of the rescue workers, some of the employees who had to climb down 80 floors out of the towers before they collapsed. Maybe they're still suffering with lung issues from all the dust that they sucked in that day. Who knows? Okay, so maybe it's still affecting them almost 20 years later. And every year there is some sort of a memorial for all the people who were lost on that day, almost 3,000 lives. And that's a good thing. May we never forget it, of course. And may we never be caught with our pants down as a nation ever again as a result of it. Somehow thinking that terrorism only happens in those other countries. Okay? In the words of an old hockey teammate of mine, did we learn from this? That was my friend Chris back then. Did we learn from this? I have my wife and I have a friend who we met at our church when we first moved down here. He's a good guy, and he was born he's about 12, 15 years older than me. He was born in Beirut, Lebanon. And he was a young teenager when the 6-day Israeli war had broken out, and they pretty much forced everybody to get out of Lebanon. And they had to fly him and his sister to Germany or something to get them out of there. And they eventually made his way here to the United States and became a citizen. And I remember bringing up 9/11 in a Bible study when I used to teach Bible study. And I mentioned, I was talking about 9/11, and he raised his hand and started, inputting his usual intellect like he always does. He's one of the smartest men that I know. And he said, Primo, that's the way he talks. Primo, I'm not going to imitate him because that's, by the way, when I imitate someone, it means I kind of like them. It doesn't mean I'm making fun of you. Okay. He pretty much said, you know what? My thoughts on this were, it's about time that it's here in the United States. Now, he wasn't saying that in the hopes that terrorism would come here. He was saying that knowing, being a Lebanese person, that eventually one day, the stuff that he witnessed as a child would make its way to our shores. He said, it's here. And he was right. We were caught with our pants down as a nation back then. I hate to use that as a pun, but it's true. We were rolling along like nothing could ever hurt us, and we got hurt. So did we learn from this? But the bottom line is this. Life went on because it had to. Now, I truly believe that eventually people will begin to see that this social distancing thing and wearing masks everywhere and being afraid to go out for a cup of coffee will pass. Now, let me pause there for a second and say this. If you choose to wear a mask, if you choose to do that, I'm not knocking you. I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm not calling you names for doing it or anything like that. Not trying to cause division. I'm just one of those folks who chooses not to. I can't wrap my brain around it. I can't. To me, again, and I'll get to that in a second, right? But life went on because it had to, okay? People will begin, I believe, to understand that this virus, to me, is no worse than flu season or allergy season or cold season. People's eyes will be open to the fact that there are other silent killers out there that have been with us for ages. Things like heart disease, lung disease, brain cancer. I mean, do we force everybody to, give up their forks and spoons if they're deemed obese? No, we don't panic. We tell them, go on a diet. Stop eating. Eat healthier. Think about how many airborne toxins you and I have taken into our lungs over the course of our lives without even thinking twice about it. If you are able to see, okay, at the micro level, all the things that you inhale every single day, would you suddenly be too afraid to leave your bed every morning? Would you turn into, Monk, like the TV show, and just be afraid to go out? Be afraid to touch everything? Life has to and must go on. Overblown information and fear are the two main factors that had everything to do with this, and how all this has panned out in our country in the past 2.5 months. And my conclusion to all of this: don't be afraid of living your life. We're all eventually going to die from something. Think about that. Okay? Now, of course, along the way, do the right things. I'm not telling you to live recklessly. Be responsible like you've always been. Don't be stupid. Use common sense when it comes to basic hygiene. Don't sneeze in people's faces or pass gas in an elevator, or at least don't make it obvious that you just did by being the only one who's smiling in the elevator. I may or may not be sharing that from personal experience. All in all, life goes on. Don't waste it by being afraid. Now, yes, there is such a thing as reverential fear, okay? But and of course, I have to bring God into this. I'm a Christian. God didn't give us a spirit of fear. So says the Bible, okay? I believe that. Even if you're not a Christian, like I am, and even if you're one of those people who maybe you pay no mind to what the Bible has to say, just hear me out on this point. The number one command in all of Scripture is, guess what? Fear not. Now, again, I can go into the little intricacies of that. Some say it's been said that there are, that particular command is in Scripture 365 times, one for each day of the year. I've never actually counted it. I don't know how true that is, but regardless, the theologians are the ones who say it's the number one command in Scripture. Okay. And why do you think that is? Why do you think the Bible went out of its way so many times to stress that point? It's because God knew that we would be afraid at times. We're human. We're fallible. We're fallen creatures. We're born in sin. There's nothing perfect about us. We fall well short of the glory of God. Okay? But he knew that we would be afraid at times. All of this is going to pass, and the spring of 2020 will soon be a distant memory. We have much more important things to worry, to talk, and to debate about. Let's focus on those things. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my op-ed piece for the week. I'll be right back.
Got home from camping last spring. Saw people, places, and things. We barely had arrived. Friends asked us to describe the people, places, and every last thing. So we unpacked our adjectives. I unpacked frustrating first. Reached in and found the word worst. Then I picked soggy and next I picked froggy and then I was ready to tell them my tale. 'Cause I'd unpacked my adjectives. Adjectives are words you use to really describe things. Handy words to carry around. Days are sunny or they're rainy. Boys are dumb or else they're brainy. Adjectives can show you which way. Adjectives are often used to help us compare things, to say how thin, how fat, how short, how tall. Girls who are tall get taller, boys who are small can get smaller, till one is the tallest and another's the smallest of all. We hiked along without care, then we ran into a bear. He was a hairy bear, he was a scary bear. We beat a hasty retreat from his lair and described him with adjectives.
Whoa! Boy, that was one big ugly bear.
You can even make adjectives out of the other parts of speech, like verbs or nouns. All you have to do is tack on an ending like ick, ish, or eric. For example, this boy can grow up to be a huge man, but still have a boyish face. Boy is a noun, but the ending ish makes it an adjective. Boyish. That describes.
Okay, before I get sued, I probably need to cut that song off. I love Schoolhouse Rock. I love going there. It's good stuff. Anyhow, like I said, tonight was going to be I had said that tonight was going to be a short show, but I'm already 36 minutes into this, so I'm actually longer than I thought I was going to be, which that's a good thing. Who cares? I can talk a little bit, as you can tell. But to be quite honest with you, I'm actually done with my topics. I've got a couple more notes here for you. I wanted to go. In thinking, in trying to plan this for this week, I was trying to, again, come up with a topic from the very beginning, from show number 1, when I laid out the outline of this broadcast. I had said that, I wasn't going to just go one straight focus with this show. I was going to try to just, make it a smorgasbord, if you will. Is that a German word? I wonder, but just a mixed variety of things. Okay. When you listen to radio stations in the car or wherever you listen to music, you look, there's different stations for different genres of music, right? You go to a country station for country songs, a metal station for metal music, talk radio for talk radio, Christian stations for Christian talk. And I thought, well, those are already out there. Let me try something different. I'll talk about anything and everything on any given night. You don't know what to expect. Make it a little bit more exciting. So I was going to go the route of sports tonight, actually. And then I said, well, I don't know. What's there really to talk about? There's no sports going on. But just it kind of and by the way, if you want to give me a buzz here in the studio, well, I call it a studio because it just sounds nice. If you want to give me a call here in the spare bedroom, the catch-all studio, if you will. Again, the number here right into the studio is 407-906-7240. Again, 407-906-7240. If you want to talk about anything or anything and everything, feel free. If you feel like chatting with me, go for it. You can interrupt me while I'm talking. I don't care. But I was, as far as the need for sports, I don't know about you, and maybe you're not a sports person like I am. I really want sports to come back. And just like the NASCAR race that was at Darlington last week, where, the driver was doing his, his spin outs after he crossed the finish line, and he got out of the car and he looked around and he was like, oh, I won. Yay. Now what? And you can pretty much hear a pin drop in the stadium after that. Again, I know that places are trying to be careful. I know, again, just like I said in the op-ed about fear and conditioning, a lot of that has to do with, the reason why there are no fans in the stands right now. And it's sad, but we need sports. I make no apology for this. We need sports to come back. Okay. And good news, I was just reading this on one of the sports forums tonight. It may have even been the NHL site, but the National Hockey League seems to pretty much have a plan in place where they're going to take, I believe, the top 24 teams now that were left, because the NHL got put on pause back in the middle of March. Right when, of course, my favorite team was first place overall. And I thought, oh, where are they going with this? This was my team's best chance to win another championship, and they paused the season. I'm like, great, just my luck. But there seems to be a plan in place to bring the season back. I don't know when, I don't know the starting date, but it looks like they're going to take the top 24 teams, give the top 4 on each. They're going to split it into 2 conferences, make the top 4 have a bye. But when you say bye, it's kind of a different bye. They're not actually going to not be playing. They may give them like a mini 3-game season that means nothing, just to get them warmed up so that they're not coming in cold to the second round. And so the 4 teams on each side will get a first round bye. And then, the other teams behind them will kill each other in little 3-game series, or I'm sorry, best of 5s to make it to that second round. And then it'll be bracketed kind of like basketball is, from what I understand. Good system. That could work. That could be exciting. Problem is, I really need that to be in front of some fans. I know I'm not a professional athlete, but I don't know about you. I don't know if I could, I don't know if I could be a pro athlete and play in front of an empty arena. It's just not the same. Those, you see it when you watch your favorite team, no matter what sport it is. Teams feed off that home crowd. Okay, when the momentum shifts and people start screaming their heads off, it's like a wave. Okay, if you watch professional football like I do, you know that one of the loudest crowds in football, and one of the crowds and one of the hardest stadiums to win in is up in Seattle, Washington, where they have that 12th man thing going on. Okay, that is proof positive that a home crowd can push you over the line to victory. And I know basketball, the NBA used to be like that, where it used to be really difficult years ago to go into a road arena and win. Okay, no matter who you were, except for if you were the Chicago Bulls from the late 80s. They never lost. I think they had basketball's an 82-game season. I think they lost like 10 games, not even one year. They were insanely good. But we need sports. Another thing I think we need, concerts. Okay, if you're an avid concert person, you know who you are. Obviously, now I know bands are trying. Okay, I know they're trying. They're doing these virtual shows, if you will, over the internet. They're doing the best they can to stay warm themselves, but to entertain. And they're doing a good job. But I'm sorry, it's just not the same over Zoom. It's just not. We need concerts. And the last point I have for you tonight, the need for just social gatherings, period. Okay. I mean, when we first moved down here to Central Florida, one of the things that my wife and I used to love to do, because we used to live closer to that side of town, was go over to this area known as Downtown Disney, which it's called Disney Springs now. I think they changed the name, and they've revitalized the entire thing. They've like doubled it in size. But we used to love walking downtown Disney. Just on a crisp, clear October night when it actually gets down to like 60 degrees down here. It's beautiful. It's perfect. Walking through the crowd, just mingling, having a nice cup of coffee, whatever. And I miss that. I mean, I know I can, you learn to cope, you learn to live without it. We'll survive, but we really need social gatherings to come back. And enough of this mask thing. I know that they say this virus, more than likely travels airborne, through the eyes, through the nose, or whatever you breathe it in. I get it. Okay. But if you're out in the open, if you're walking through a plaza, okay, what are the chances? I mean, don't even let me go there. I'll go into another op-ed. Either way, it's been a great show. Well, for me, it has. I've been the only one talking. I want to thank you for joining me on the broadcast tonight. It's been, I've been talking my head off. I get it. But let me leave you with this. Let me leave you with this cute little quote that I found. And it kind of fits for the time that we're in. Common sense is like soap. The people who need it the most never use it. Good night.
One banana, two banana, three banana, four bananas make a bunch of so many more. Over the highway, the banana bunnies go, coming up to bring you the banana split show. Making up a mess of fun. Making up a mess of fun. Lots of fun for everyone.